The world awoke on Easter Monday to shocking news from the Vatican. Pope Francis, the 266th leader of the Catholic Church, had died at the age of 88, just hours after appearing before thousands of faithful in St. Peter's Square for Easter Sunday celebrations. The pontiff, who had transformed the papacy with his humility and focus on the marginalized, had returned, as Cardinal Farrell announced, to the house of the Father. Today we explore the Pope's final hours, the traditions surrounding a papal death, and how Francis, true to his character, changed many of these centuries-old customs. No one could have predicted the sudden turn of events. Just 24 hours before his death, Pope Francis appeared before tens of thousands of Catholics gathered in St. Peter's Square for Easter Sunday Mass. Though visibly frail and in a wheelchair, he blessed the crowds, waving to the faithful as he was driven around the square, pausing multiple times to bless babies brought to him. His Easter message, delivered by an aide while he sat watching, called for peace in Gaza and Ukraine, condemning the great thirst for death seen in global conflicts. These would be his final public words to the world. Just hours later, at 7:35 a.m. local time on Easter Monday, Pope Francis died at the Vatican. The pontiff's health had been declining since February when he was hospitalized for pneumonia in both lungs, a condition made worse by the partial lung removal he underwent as a young man in Argentina. Despite his struggles, few expected his death so soon after his public Easter appearance. BBC correspondent David Giglione described witnessing people running toward St. Peter's Square when the news broke, some openly crying in the streets of Rome. Jorge Mario Bergoglio's journey to the papacy was unconventional from the start. Born in Buenos Aires to Italian immigrants fleeing fascism, he worked as a nightclub bouncer and chemical technician before joining the Jesuits. Rising through the ranks, he eventually became the first non-European pope in nearly 1,300 years, the first from the Americas, and the first Jesuit to occupy the throne of St. Peter. During his 11-year papacy, Francis redefined what it meant to be pope. He rejected the traditional papal apartments, choosing instead to live in the Vatican guest house. He washed the feet of prisoners, embraced the disfigured, and advocated fiercely for the poor, migrants, and the environment. His final Easter message embodied his life's work, calling for freedom of religion, thought, and expression while pleading for peace in conflict zones and aid for starving people who aspire to a future of peace. The death of a pope triggers a series of carefully choreographed events that have remained largely unchanged for centuries, until Francis. Traditionally, when a pope dies, the Camerlengo verifies the death by calling the pope's baptismal name 3 times. When there is no response, the Camerlengo announces the pope is truly dead. The pope's fisherman's ring is then destroyed, symbolizing the end of his authority. The body is typically embalmed within 24 hours and placed on a raised platform called a catafalque in St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. Traditionally, popes were buried in 3 nested coffins, cypress, lead, and oak, each symbolizing different aspects of the papal office. But Francis, consistent with his lifelong simplicity, rewrote these traditions. He approved plans for a less elaborate funeral and burial. Instead of 3 coffins, he chose a simple wooden coffin lined with zinc. He also eliminated the tradition of displaying his body on a catafalque, opting instead to remain inside the coffin with the lid removed for mourners to pay their respects. Perhaps most notably, Francis will be the first pope in over a century to be buried outside the Vatican. Rather than joining his predecessors in the Vatican grotto beneath St. Peter's Basilica, Francis will be laid to rest in the Basilica of St. Mary Major, one of Rome's 4 major papal basilicas. This choice reflects Francis's deep devotion to Mary and his desire to remain connected to the people of Rome even in death. The basilica sits in the heart of the city, accessible to all who wish to pay their respects, a fitting final resting place for a pope who constantly pushed the church to go beyond its walls and into the margins of society. As news of the pope's death spread, tributes poured in from around the world. World leaders, regardless of faith or politics, recognized the profound impact Francis had on global affairs. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen noted how he inspired millions far beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and pure love for the less fortunate. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy remarked, "I had the privilege of enjoying his friendship," adding that Francis had asked the world for the courage to change direction. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who had met with the Pope just hours before his death, expressed that his heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, remembered Francis as both a holy man of God who was also very human, witty, lively, and good to be with. In the coming days, the College of Cardinals will gather in Rome to elect Francis's successor in a process known as the conclave. After a 9-day mourning period, the cardinals will enter the Sistine Chapel, where they will remain sequestered until they elect a new pope by a 2/3 majority. When a decision is reached, white smoke will billow from the chapel's chimney, and the famous announcement, Habemus Papam, we have a pope, will ring out across St. Peter's Square. The new pontiff will face the challenging task of following a pope who transformed the papacy and who remained, until his final Easter message, a voice for peace, compassion, and care for the most vulnerable. Pope Francis's death during this Easter season and Jubilee year, when millions of pilgrims are expected to visit Rome seeking forgiveness, adds poignancy to an already solemn moment. The pontiff who famously said he came from the ends of the earth changed the Catholic Church and touched the hearts of believers and non-believers alike. As the bells of St. Peter's toll in mourning and the faithful gather to say farewell, Francis leaves behind a legacy that challenges us all to, as he often said, build bridges, not walls, and to remember those at the margins. For a man who chose the name Francis after Saint Francis of Assisi, the saint of the poor, his final journey maintains the simplicity and humility that defined his papacy. In death, as in life, Pope Francis continues to teach us about the essence of faith and service. In the coming days, millions will watch as cardinals gather for the conclave that will select his successor. Who will be chosen to follow in Francis's revolutionary footsteps, and how will the Church continue to evolve in our rapidly changing world? We'll be bringing you exclusive coverage of the papal funeral and the historic conclave that follows. This is a pivotal moment not just for Catholics but for our global society. If you found this insight into Vatican traditions valuable, please hit that subscribe button now to stay updated on this historic transition of power. Your likes and comments help us reach more people with this important story, so take a second to share your thoughts below. For those who want to go deeper, our channel members get exclusive content including expert interviews with Vatican insiders, historical analysis of past papal transitions, and real-time updates from our team on the ground in Rome. Join our membership today by clicking the Join button below. Share this video with anyone interested in this historic moment, whether they're following for religious reasons or simply fascinated by these centuries-old traditions playing out in our modern world. Thank you for watching.